The Hidden One. The neon lights of Orion's edge flickered against the dark sky, painting the streets in shades of blue and red. It was a city of metal and glass, where aliens and humans coexisted, but not as equals. Humans were the weak ones, the forgotten ones, the ones who took whatever jobs they could just to survive. Inside a dimly lit bar at the edge of the city, Zyara kept her head low. The hood of her cloak covered her face, hiding her identity. She never spoke more than necessary. She never made eye contact. She had survived this way for a long time. The bar smelled of spilled drinks and burnt circuits. It was filled with different species, tall reptilian beings with glowing eyes, insect-like creatures clicking their mandibles, and cyber-enhanced aliens whose bodies shone with metallic parts. Among them, a few humans moved cautiously, knowing their place. Zyara worked behind the bar, serving drinks without question. She had no friends here. No allies. Only survival. Then, the trouble started. A group of 3 alien thugs sat at a table in the corner. They were large, muscular, and covered in dark armor. They had been drinking for hours, their voices getting louder with each passing moment. They weren't just any aliens, they were Brakthar, known for their cruelty. Across the room, a human man sat alone, quietly sipping his drink. He looked like he didn't belong there. He had short, messy brown hair, a scar running across his left cheek, and sharp eyes that observed everything. He didn't look afraid, but he should have been. One of the Brakthar aliens slammed his fist on the table. "Hey, human! You think you're too good to greet us?" The bar went silent. Everyone knew what was coming. The human, Darren, looked up slowly. He didn't say anything. Another Brakthar stood up, his heavy boots echoing on the floor. "You deaf, weakling. Maybe we should teach you some respect." Zyara clenched her fists. She had seen this before. Humans were always the target. No one would step in to help. She should look away. She should mind her own business. But something felt different this time. Darren leaned back in his chair, completely calm. "Respect," he said, his voice casual. "Strange. I thought respect was something you earned." The Brakthar leader's face twisted in anger. "What did you just say?" "I said," Darren repeated, standing up, "you're all loud, ugly, and really bad at intimidation." The bar gasped. Someone whispered, "He's dead." The Brakthar lunged at him. But Darren was faster. He dodged the alien's punch and slammed his elbow into the creature's ribs. The Brakthar stumbled back, growling in rage. The other 2 thugs jumped in, and the fight turned brutal. Darren wasn't the strongest fighter, but he was smart. He moved quickly, dodging, striking, using the environment to his advantage. He knocked over a chair, making one alien trip. He grabbed a bottle and smashed it against another's head. For the first time, the bar saw a human fighting back, and winning. Zyara's breath caught in her throat. This wasn't normal. Humans didn't do this. Humans ran, or they begged for mercy. But this one was different. Then, suddenly, the fight stopped. The Brakthar leader held a knife, and it wasn't aimed at Darren. It was aimed at her. Zyara froze as the alien pointed at her with a cruel smile. "Let's make this more fun. Take off the hood, girl." Her heart pounded. No. Not here. Not in front of all these people. She didn't move. The Brakthar took a step closer. "Show us what you're hiding," he said, his voice filled with amusement. "Or maybe I just rip it off myself." Darren wiped blood from his lip and frowned. "Hey," he said, stepping in front of Zyara. "You want to fight? Keep it with me." The Brakthar laughed. "You're protecting her. Why? Do you even know what she is?" Zyara's grip tightened around the tray she was holding. She could feel everyone's eyes on her now. The silence was suffocating. Doesn't matter, Darren said, standing firm. She doesn't want to show her face. That's reason enough. The alien snarled, his grip on the knife tightening. You're making a mistake, human. Darren smiled. Wouldn't be my first. A tense moment passed. Then, the Brakthar stepped back, spitting on the ground. Fine. Keep your secrets, girl. But you won't hide forever. With that, the thugs turned and left. The bar remained silent, every patron still watching. Zyara's hands were shaking. She had almost been exposed. She turned toward Darren. Why? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He shrugged. Seemed like the right thing to do. She studied him, trying to understand. Humans never interfered in alien business. They never took risks. But this one had. And now, because of him, she was in more danger than ever. The unlikely protector. The cold wind of Orion's edge howled through the narrow streets as Zyara slipped into the shadows. Her hood was pulled tighter than ever, her heart still hammering in her chest. She had almost been exposed. Her hands trembled as she moved quickly down the alley, avoiding the neon-lit roads where security drones hovered above. The Brakthar thugs would come looking for her. She had stayed hidden for too long. Tonight, everything had changed. And it was because of him. Darren. The human had stepped in like a fool. He had risked his life for someone he didn't even know. It made no sense. She had learned long ago that no one did anything without a reason. She needed to disappear. Now. But just as she reached a quieter street, a voice behind her stopped her cold. You're welcome, by the way. She spun around. Darren stood there, hands in his pockets, looking completely unfazed. A small cut above his eyebrow was still bleeding, but he didn't seem to care. Her first instinct was to run. Her second instinct was to silence him. Instead, she glared. You shouldn't have done that. Darren raised an eyebrow. You're welcome for saving your life. Zyara's jaw tightened. I didn't ask you to. He let out a short laugh. Yeah, well, your plan of standing there and hoping they lost interest wasn't exactly working. He tilted his head. Why do they care so much about your face, anyway? She took a step back. None of your business. Darren sighed, rubbing his neck. All right, fine. No need to thank me or anything. She turned away, ready to leave. But then he said something that made her blood run cold. They called you by name. Zyara froze. Darren crossed his arms. Zyara, right? Didn't seem like a random attack. They knew you. She didn't move. She had been so careful. Never drawing attention, never using her real name. And yet, somehow, they had found her. Darren watched her carefully. So, who exactly are you running from? Zyara clenched her fists. She had to end this conversation. She turned sharply. Walk away, human. Forget you saw me. Darren smirked. Yeah, see, I don't think I can do that. She narrowed her eyes. Why not? He shrugged. Because now I'm curious. Zyara cursed under her breath. Curiosity was dangerous. She needed to scare him off. Make him leave. So she took a step closer. Lowered her voice. Made sure he could hear the threat in her words. If you stay near me, you'll die. Darren didn't flinch. His smirk only grew. That's supposed to scare me? Zyara stared at him. This was insane. Humans weren't like this. They were supposed to avoid danger, not walk straight into it. Who was this man? Before she could say another word, a sudden hum filled the air. Zyara's stomach dropped. Drones. She grabbed Darren's wrist without thinking and yanked him into the nearest alley. Just in time. A metallic, spider-like security drone hovered past the entrance, scanning the street with a red laser. Darren tensed. Okay, that's not good. Zyara held her breath. The drone scanned the area, then, after a few seconds, moved on. She let go of his wrist and turned to leave. That was your only warning. Don't follow me. She barely took 2 steps before his voice stopped her again. They're scanning for you, aren't they? Zyara clenched her jaw. She didn't answer. Darren exhaled. Alright, listen. Clearly, you're in trouble. And I just got into a fight for you, which means I'm probably in trouble too. She turned. That's not my problem. Darren took a step closer. Yeah, well, it kind of is now. Zyara gave him a sharp look. You don't understand. If they find me, I don't just die. The people around me do too. Darren's expression changed slightly. Not fear. Understanding. He studied her for a long moment. Then, his voice lowered. Who exactly are they? Zyara hesitated. She had spent years hiding from that question. She had changed her name, erased her identity, buried her past. But tonight, it had caught up with her. And for the first time in a long time, she wasn't facing it alone. The truth behind the mask. The neon-lit alley was silent, except for the faint hum of the city beyond. The security drone had passed, but Zyara knew better than to relax. Darren stood there, arms crossed, waiting. His sharp gaze never left her. She hated that look. Curiosity. Interest. Questions. She had spent years making sure no one ever looked at her like that. Zyara turned away. Go home, human. Darren leaned against the wall. Nah. I think I'll stay. She clenched her jaw. Why? You don't even know me. Darren smirked. Exactly. That's the interesting part. Zyara exhaled slowly. This was dangerous. This human was stubborn, too stubborn. If she didn't stop him now, he'd keep following her, keep asking questions. And that meant he wouldn't live long. She turned sharply. Fine. You want answers? Here's one, I am supposed to be dead. Darren's smirk faded. He blinked. Okay. Not what I was expecting. Zyara pulled back her hood slightly, just enough for him to see a glimpse of her mark. A glowing, silver crest ran along the side of her neck, barely visible beneath her skin. It pulsed softly, carrying a power most beings in the galaxy feared. Darren's eyes flickered with something, not fear. Something else. Recognition. His voice was quieter now. You're royal, aren't you? Zyara's stomach twisted. She pulled the hood back down. I was. Silence. Then, Darren let out a low whistle. Well. That explains why people want to kill you. Zyara gave him a sharp look. It's not a joke. Didn't say it was. She studied him, trying to figure him out. Most people would have run away by now. Most people would have bowed or begged for favor, or worse, turned her in for the bounty. But Darren? He just stood there, like this was just another crazy Tuesday. Zyara's voice hardened. You should walk away. Darren tilted his head. Should I? Yes, she said, stepping closer. Because if you don't, they will come for you too. Darren's expression didn't change. Then, he did something unexpected. He laughed. A small, amused chuckle. Like she had just told him the weather was bad. Zyara's eye twitched. What's so funny? Darren shrugged. It's just, do you really think this is the first time someone wanted me dead? Zyara narrowed her eyes. You don't understand. No, you don't understand, Darren interrupted. You're not the only one with enemies, princess. That word hit her like a blade. Princess. No one had called her that in years. She stepped back, her fingers twitching toward the small knife hidden in her cloak. Don't call me that. Darren raised his hands in mock surrender. Noted. Silence stretched between them. The city's distant noise felt far away. Then, Darren sighed. Look, Zyara. You've clearly got problems. But the thing is, he glanced up at the sky. So do I. Zyara frowned. What do you mean? Darren hesitated, then muttered, let's just say. I pissed off the wrong people too. She studied him carefully. He wasn't lying. There was something in his eyes, a shadow, a weight he carried. Zyara crossed her arms. So, you're saying what? That you want to team up? Darren gave her a lazy grin. I mean, think about it. You're running from killers. I'm running from killers. 2 is better than 1. Zyara scoffed. I don't need help. Darren smirked. Yeah. Because from where I'm standing, you almost got your cover blown tonight. Zyara's fists tightened. She hated that he was right. She turned away. You'll regret this, human. Darren chuckled. Already do. And with that, the unlikely partnership began. Neither of them knew it yet, but this was the moment everything changed. Hunted. A storm was coming. Not the kind that tore through the skies with thunder and rain, this one was worse. Zyara felt it in her bones as she walked through the back alleys of Orion's Edge, her hood pulled low, her movements quick and precise. She had spent years avoiding the eyes of the galaxy, blending into the cracks of society. But tonight, she had made a mistake. They knew she was alive now. And they would come for her. She wasn't the only one in danger anymore. Darren followed beside her, hands in his jacket pockets, his footsteps oddly relaxed for someone who had just made enemies with an alien death squad. You always walk this fast, he muttered. Zyara didn't slow down. We don't have time to waste. Darren sighed. You could at least tell me what we're running from. She glanced at him. Death. Darren gave a half-smile. Yeah, see, that's not very specific. Zyara didn't answer. She was listening, always listening. The city was never quiet, but something was wrong. Too many of the usual street thugs were gone. The market stalls had packed up earlier than usual. The vendors knew something was coming. Then she heard it. The hum of a hunter's ship. Her breath hitched. Darren must have noticed the change in her expression because he muttered, I take it that's bad. She grabbed his arm and pulled him into a darkened side street, pressing him against the wall. The ship passed overhead, slow and searching. Zyara recognized the markings. Elite bounty hunters. They weren't just here to capture her. They were here to make an example of her. Darren exhaled slowly. Okay. That's a little more bad than I expected. She ignored him, focusing on the ship as it hovered in place. Scanning. A small drone detached from the underbelly of the vessel, descending into the street below. It was searching for heat signatures. Zyara's mind worked fast. If the drone got close enough, it would detect them immediately. She turned to Darren. Do exactly what I say. Darren lifted an eyebrow. Not usually my thing, but sure. She grabbed him by the shoulders and pushed him back against the wall. Then, she kissed him. It was barely a second, but it worked. Darren froze as the heat-scanning drone passed over them, its sensors flickering for a moment before dismissing them as just another couple lost in the shadows. The drone hovered for a few more seconds, then moved on. Zyara pulled away. Darren blinked. Ah. Not that I'm complaining, but... She slapped a hand over his mouth. Shut up. Darren nodded. The ship above roared away, disappearing into the deeper sectors of the city. The danger wasn't over, but they had seconds to move before another sweep. Zyara turned, pulling her hood back over her face. Come on. Darren jogged to catch up. You know, a warning before you do something like that would be nice. She didn't look at him. It worked, didn't it? Darren let out a short laugh. Yeah, but now I owe you dinner. Zyara ignored him. She was focused on one thing. They needed to disappear, permanently. But that meant going to the one place she swore she would never return. A hidden sector in Orion's Edge. A place where no one asked questions, and no one walked out without owing something. The underworld of the galaxy. And if she was right, someone there was already waiting for her. The Great Betrayal. The deeper they went into Orion's Edge, the darker the streets became. The neon glow of the upper districts faded, swallowed by the shadows of towering structures built on centuries of corruption. Here, in the undersector, the laws of the city didn't apply. This was where criminals, bounty hunters, and fugitives disappeared. And this was where Zyara was taking them. Darren walked beside her, scanning their surroundings. So, this place has a very, you might get stabbed for looking at someone wrong vibe. Zyara didn't respond. She knew exactly where she was going. She knew who she needed to find. A name she hadn't spoken in years. They stopped outside a rusted steel door covered in alien glyphs. Darren glanced at her. Friend of yours? Zyara exhaled. Something like that. She knocked, a very specific pattern. Seconds passed. Then, the door slid open just enough to reveal a pair of glowing amber eyes. A voice, low and dangerous, muttered in an alien dialect. Zyara answered in the same tongue. The door opened fully, and a massive figure stepped aside to let them in. Darren let out a breath. Great. More giant aliens. Zyara ignored him and walked inside. The room was dimly lit, filled with strange machinery and weapons stacked against the walls. At the center, a figure sat behind a desk, staring at them with cold amusement. A Cytherian. Tall, with deep violet skin and intricate gold tattoos running along her arms, Velcro was someone Zyara had once trusted. Once. Velcro smirked. Well, well. Look who finally crawled back. Zyara kept her voice steady. I need safe passage off-world. Velcro leaned back in her chair. Straight to business. No, how have you been, Velcro? No, sorry I left you to die. Darren raised an eyebrow at Zyara. Oh yeah, this sounds promising. Zyara ignored him. Can you do it or not? Velcro tapped her fingers against the desk, studying her. The problem, princess, is that you're very valuable right now. Zyara's stomach tightened. She knew what was coming next before Velcro even said it. There's a bounty on your head so high, even I had to stop and consider my options. Velcro smiled, but there was no warmth in it. So tell me, Zyara, why shouldn't I turn you in? Darren let out a low whistle. I take it back. This is way worse than getting stabbed. Zyara's muscles tensed, but she kept her face unreadable. Velcro was testing her. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Zyara spoke. Because I know what my people are hiding. Velcro's expression flickered, just for a second. That was all Zyara needed. You think I ran away just to survive? Zyara stepped forward. You think I went into hiding because I was scared? She shook her head. The truth is bigger than any bounty, Velcro. My people want me dead not because I'm a lost princess. She met Velcro's gaze. But because I'm the only one who knows their secret. Darren glanced at her, curiosity flashing across his face. Even he didn't know what she was talking about. Velcra's smirk faded. She tapped a few buttons on her wrist device. A screen flickered to life, displaying Zyara's wanted notice. The bounty had doubled since yesterday. Velcra let out a slow breath. You're more trouble than you're worth. Zyara's pulse quickened. If Velcra chose to betray her now, there was no way out. Then Velcra did something unexpected. She laughed. Fine, Velcra said, standing up. You've got my attention. I'll get you off-world. Zyara's shoulders relaxed slightly. But she knew better than to trust too soon. Velcra gestured toward Darren. And him? Darren grinned. Oh, I'm just here for the death threats and questionable life choices. Velcra raised an eyebrow. Charming. Zyara crossed her arms. We leave tonight. Velcra smirked. Careful, princess. You might owe me for this. Zyara's voice was cold. I already do. But as they walked out of the room, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had just made a terrible mistake. Because Velcra had let them go too easily. And Zyara knew one thing for certain, no one in the undersector did anything for free. The ultimate choice. The smuggler's ship was hidden deep beneath Orion's edge, buried under layers of industrial waste and forgotten tunnels. The air was thick with the scent of burned fuel and rusted metal. Zyara followed Velcra through the narrow corridors, her senses on high alert. Something wasn't right. Velcra had agreed too quickly. Darren walked beside her, hands still casually in his jacket pockets. So, this secret of yours, he said under his breath. You want to share with the class? Zyara didn't answer. She had never told anyone. Not since the day she escaped. Not since she learned the truth. Velcra stopped at a heavy steel door and gestured. Your ship's inside. Zyara narrowed her eyes. Too easy. She hesitated. Open it. Velcra tilted her head, then tapped a small device on her wrist. The doors hissed as they slid open, revealing a fully armed squad of enforcers waiting inside. Zyara didn't think. She moved. She shoved Darren back as the first gunfire rang out. A stun blast hit the wall inches from her face. Darren swore, diving for cover. Okay, so I was right. This was a bad idea. Zyara rolled, dodging another blast, and spun toward Velcra. You betrayed me. Velcra smirked. You should have seen it coming. Zyara's pulse pounded. She had. She had just hoped she was wrong. Two enforcers rushed forward. Zyara ducked, twisting her body between them. In a blur, she grabbed one by the arm and used his own momentum to flip him over her shoulder. Darren was already moving, faster than she expected. He grabbed a metal pipe from the floor and swung it, knocking the second enforcer into the wall. Great. Now we're fighting the whole city. Zyara's mind raced. They couldn't win this fight. They had to escape. She scanned the hangar, there. A maintenance tunnel near the back wall. Darren, she shouted. Follow me. He didn't hesitate. He never did. They sprinted toward the tunnel, dodging gunfire. Velcra didn't chase them. She didn't need to. Because as Zyara reached the exit, the truth finally hit her. This wasn't about the bounty. It was never about the bounty. Velcra's voice echoed behind them. You can't run from this, princess. You know what you are. Zyara's heart clenched. That was the real reason she had been hunted. She wasn't just a runaway royal. She wasn't just a threat to the throne. She was something worse. Something that could change the fate of the entire galaxy. And now, because of her, Darren was in the middle of it too. The final stand. Zyara's breath was sharp, her pulse hammering as she and Darren sprinted through the maintenance tunnel. The air was thick with the scent of burning metal, the sound of enforcers yelling behind them. Darren, barely keeping up, shot her a look. So. Just to recap. You're not just a runaway princess. You're something else entirely. Something bad enough that even criminals don't want you alive. Zyara didn't respond. Because he was right. This wasn't about power. It was about what was inside her. Velkra's words rang in her head, "You know what you are." And she did. Zyara wasn't just a lost royal. She was the key to something ancient. Something her people had hidden for centuries. And now, that secret was coming for her. The trap. They burst through the tunnel exit, and stopped cold. The landing platform stretched out before them, rain glistening off the metal floor. The ship Velkra had promised was there. But so was an entire battalion of armed enforcers. Darren exhaled. "You have got to be kidding me." A voice boomed through the air. Zyara of the Imperial Line. A tall, armored figure stepped forward, flanked by guards. His helmet gleamed under the city lights, his voice a low growl. General Orvek. One of the highest-ranking enforcers in the Empire. And the man who had personally ordered her execution. Zyara's fingers twitched toward the blade hidden beneath her cloak. "You shouldn't have come yourself, Orvek." The general's expression didn't change. "You are out of places to run, girl." Darren leaned toward her. "So, do we have a plan? Or are we just dying dramatically?" Zyara glanced at the ship. If they could reach it, they had a chance. But the enforcers were waiting. And Orvek knew it. "Surrender now," he said, stepping forward. "And we will make it painless." Zyara's hands clenched into fists. Orvek thought she was afraid. He was wrong. She turned to Darren. "When I move, follow me." Darren blinked. "What are you?" She was already moving. The reckoning. Zyara was fast. Faster than a human. Faster than even most of Orvek's elite guards. Before anyone could react, she was on them. Her blade flashed, slicing through armor. She ducked low, twisting through their ranks, her movements almost unnatural. She felt the power in her veins hum, the thing she had always been afraid to use. The thing that made her different. Lightning crackled at her fingertips. Orvek barely had time to react before she sent a pulse of raw energy slamming into him. He flew back, crashing into a cargo crate. Darren, meanwhile, had grabbed a fallen enforcer's weapon. He fired wildly, covering her as she sprinted toward the ship. The alarms screamed through the landing bay. More troops were coming. They had seconds. Zyara reached the ramp and turned, breathing hard. Darren was still fighting. 2 enforcers grabbed him, too many for him to handle alone. Zyara didn't think. She let go. For the first time in years, she stopped holding back. The energy inside her surged. The air crackled. Lightning exploded from her hands, slamming into the enforcers and sending them flying. Darren stumbled back, eyes wide. "Okay. Yeah. That was new." She grabbed his arm and yanked him into the ship. "Fly. Now." Darren didn't argue. He sprinted to the cockpit as she sealed the hatch. The engines roared to life, and the ship lurched off the platform. Orvek, barely standing, watched them escape. His voice came through the comms, low, seething. "You cannot run from what you are, Zyara." Zyara stared out the viewport as the city shrank beneath them. She knew he was right. This wasn't over. It had never been about surviving. It was about facing what she truly was. Darren's voice crackled over the comms. "So, where to, princess?" Zyara closed her eyes. And for the first time in her life, she stopped running. Her answer was clear. "We fight."